Okay, so this is my Lest We Forget project on Calvin Coolidge, by Harlan Stratton. He was our 30th president of the United States. He was president from 1923 to 1928, and his conservative, pro-business policies were the reason for economic growth during the 1920s. Reduced taxes, reduced the federal budget, focused on internal affairs, and these are the reasons why I think we should remember him and learn from his advances. He was born July 4th, 1872, to John Coolidge and Josephine Moore Coolidge. He grew up with his father being a state legislator, so he literally grew up being around politics from a very young age and knew the system, and so that would help him with his rise to becoming president. He spent his childhood in a small town of Plymouth, Vermont, where he was in a farming family. So he knew how to care for animals, harvest crops, plant crops, stuff like that. And his father also owned the general store in the local town, so that um, meant that Calvin Coolidge saw finances up close and personal and knew how to take care of money. Um, at the age of 13, his mother died on March 14th, 1885, and after that was sent to Black River Academy in Ludlow, Vermont. During this time, he worked at the Ludlow Toy Manufacturing Company, where he would make tall dolls and other toys. He did very well in school. At the beginning, he did need tutoring, and he graduated in 1890. But shortly, right before his graduation, his sister Abby died. After that, he took his entrance exam for Amherst College, failed his first time, got bronchitis, had to go back to Black River Academy and St. Jonesbury Academy for review and crash courses in specific subjects. In the spring of 1891, he got accepted into Amherst College. His first year and first semester went very badly. He got called by his peers Alden, which means nothing in Greek, and he felt very homesick because of this, but his father would not let him quit school. Um, his second semester went a little bit better. This is where he found his passion for politics, and he was also old enough to vote during his second semester. Politics boosted his way of life. It boosted his confidence, his relationships with other people, and this is also where he found a love of public speaking. And because of this, he wanted to practice law. So he went to a law firm in Northampton, became an apprentice, and he opened up his own law firm in 1898 in Northampton, Massachusetts. In that same year, he ran for Solicitor General and for the City Council, and was chosen to give a eulogy for President McKinley, who was assassinated recently before that. In 1905, he married Grace Anna Coolidge. They had their first son a year later in 1906, and in that same year, he became a state legislator for Massachusetts. 2 years later, his second son was born, and he became mayor of Northampton in 1909. 2 years later, he won a Senate seat for Massachusetts and was able to unify the Democratic and Republican senators. Um, he won the lieutenant governor seat in 1915 and became governor shortly after in 1918 of Massachusetts. He was governor during the Boston police strikes of 1919, and him dealing with that situation thrust him to the national spotlight, and rumors surrounded him being the Republican nomination for president. He did not choose to run for president that year, but instead got nominated for vice president under Warren Harding. But sadly, Warren Harding became ill after a nationwide trip around the country. He died August 2nd, 1923, and a couple hours later, Calvin Coolidge was sworn in by his father to become president of the United States. Calvin continued Harding's work on lowering the national budget, and he cut taxes. In 1924, he ran under the Republican nomination, but during his campaign, his son, Calvin Jr., died from sepsis on July 7th, 1924. During his presidency, he was very pro-business, He focused on internal affairs, and he opposed the League of Nations that was set up by Woodrow Wilson after the First World War. In 1928, he chose not to run for another term. He wanted to honor the past presidents. And he simply said, "I do not choose to run." And that was it. After his presidency, he retired to Northampton again, and he wrote his autobiography and wrote a newspaper. And just 4 years after his presidency, he died on January 5th, 1933 from heart failure. And these are my works cited. My main source was the biography Coolidge by Amity Shales, and I looked up the Boston Police Strike and just an overview of Coolidge's life that helped me with this project.